Arielle, welcome to the show. Welcome to Product Growth Stories. They're so happy to have you on. So Arielle is representing Balsamic, and we'd love to dive in. What originally brought you to Balsamic in the first place?
Yeah, so it was nearly 3 years ago now, and Balsamic was looking for their first head of marketing.
Hmm.
There was somewhat of a marketing team, kind of informal, nothing super like there was a newsletter and there was some education, but there was nothing connected. And so there
Hmm.
were some folks that were doing marketing type activities, but Balsamic had just grown because it was a great tool and a great product. And the team was ready to bring someone in that could connect all the dots, that could start thinking about that customer journey and communication and all of those things. And I used the tool, gosh, early in my career when I was kind of straddling product and marketing and I was
Hmm.
working in tech startups and there was no other tools like Figma, Sketch, InVision. They didn't exist. And so it was Balsamic. And I was like, oh man, they need a marketer? That sounds super cool because it's an established company and you get to build a function, kind of like
Yeah.
it's a startup. That never happens.
Yeah, that is fun. And I know product people are always, looking for good marketers, but the other way around, like good marketers, we just want to represent a great product at the end of the day. And
I know.
would you classify Balsamic as B2B? Because it kind of spread, it's a business product to wireframe, but also you're bringing in users from different, there might be people without a company. How do you classify it?
Yeah. So we're B2B. But within the B2B, we're a PLG motion. So we're
Hmm.
product led growth. We don't have a sales team. We're not doing a ton of outbound. People are coming to us. We're growing through that product loop. And we primarily do sell to businesses, but it's individuals at those businesses that are bringing Balsamic on to their teams. Our sweet spot is lean product teams. And
Hmm.
you're going to find those everywhere from the indie startup of a couple people to in these big enterprise companies, you'll have an R&D team or you'll have an internal tools team or you'll have a team that's on a project and they don't have access to a designer or their designers are all busy and so we have that niche with the lean teams. We have some solopreneurs and some like indie founders that just kind of hang out and use the tool on their own,
Hmm.
but they're still building a business. They're ultimately using Balsamic to build their products that they want to sell or use for personal, whatever that is. And then we have our offerings for free for nonprofits and then for educators to bring Balsamic into the classroom because we believe in enabling everybody to create great work.
And as a marketer, what do you say is the right point or how do I frame this better? I'm just thinking about, for anyone doing B2B SaaS, they have to choose which motion to go with. Are they going to go with sales led? Are they going to go PLG? What attributes of a product really tell you which direction makes more sense?
I think it definitely depends on the company, but a couple things that you can look at a high level. Are there like these lengthy contracts? And do you need this whole contract cycle? Like we're going to sign for 1 or 2 years and then do renewal? Well, that type of business needs their handheld more. If
Mhm.
there's any sort of custom implementation of your product, if bringing it into the workflow is a thing that any B2B deals with, but like an email tool, you're gonna need some level of salespeople to help that process along. Those are bigger contracts, bigger pricing. Enterprise companies are often more comfortable working with salespeople, even if they say they hate it. But if you've got some lower cost that's easy for folks to bring in, you may not need a sales team. And then the flip side of that, because you can go through all the markers, right? Of like, what type of product do we have? But you also have to think about what type of business are you? What do you have resource wise to hire people, to maintain people? Like, what's your appetite for company size? At Balsamic, for example, our founder, Pelty, was like, I kind of wanted a company of one. I didn't actually want all these people, but
Whoops.
we grew and now we have them.
Yeah.
And now that we have them, there's not an appetite to grow this huge sales motion. And now with AI and all of the stuff, we've seen that companies can do more with less, and you can have some agentic AI salespeople, and you can do lots of stuff, but you really do have to think about appetite. You need a bigger size team if you're going to do a sales motion. And if you don't want that and you don't want to invest in it that way, then you have to figure out well, what makes this self-service? How do I make support self-service? How do I make buying self-service? How do I
Hmm.
make the journey so obvious? And how do I connect all of the dots in a way where the customer feels supported without me holding their hand on a call?
Makes a lot of sense. So for SaaS businesses that are PLG, what's the right point? Because it's so lean in general. What's the right point to bring on a marketer?
I think when you are at that, like, okay, we're getting that product market fit, right? Like the product is in a shape where you're like, all right, people like this thing, they're going to buy this thing, we can get people on board. Then you probably want to start bringing in at least a marketing minded person,
You're
depending on
right.
how fast you want to scale. Right. Then that's how you decide who you want to bring in and what type of marketer, because there are many different types. But I think you need to start finding that early product market fit. Otherwise, product and marketing are gonna go like this, and it sucks.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And there's a big difference between, say, the kind of marketing you would do to validate an idea versus a product versus, scale. And take balsamic, for example, what is that point when you need a head of marketing versus, say, okay, we just have some people executing these plays. Like, when do you need someone to pull it all together?
Yeah, it really depends on the business and the type of founder you have. So, for example, we have a pretty technical founder. Like Peldy is a dev at heart. He's an engineer. He is itching for us to give him any type of coding project to do. But he's also a really good speaker and he was a really good evangelist for Balsamic. And when that kind of wound down and the team was working on some other stuff, you end up getting into what I call random checkbox marketing. And
Hmm.
there's actually a brilliant marketer, Brendan Hufford, that talks about this a lot on his LinkedIn. But checkbox marketing is when you put this list of stuff together, like we should make content and we should do this stuff, and you don't have someone connecting all the dots. And so then you start looking at the numbers and you're like, huh, that's weird. Like, are we getting the most that we want out of this? Like, are we
Hmm.
growing at the pace we want or think, is this accidental or is this on purpose? Right. And so then you bring someone in to look at things like, well, who are you talking to? Like, for example, when I came in, balsamic was for and I'm not kidding.
Yeah.
That was literally what the homepage said. And that's amazing because that is actually the mentality that helped balsamic grow for so long. But when you start a business in 2008, that kind of works and it's a different world now.
Yeah.
If we say, hey, we're for everyone, no one knows what that means. No one knows if we're for them. And so one of the first things I did was say, "Hey, we should look at where the revenue is coming from and who's actually benefiting from it," because our ICP had changed over time too, right? So when you have a
Hmm.
team that's like doing a bunch of stuff that they think is good, there's no super high level strategy above it. It kind of worked in the early days. Then you're like, "Oh, I don't know how this feels. We're kind of running directionless.
I've
Planning is
seen
weird.
this.
Things are getting stuck."
Yes.
That's when you know.
Yeah, that's a great way. That's a very concrete way to put it. I've definitely know what you're talking about when you different companies and you see that, okay, we have several people kind of executing specific playbooks and maybe people just keep adding them. Is kind of what you're describing, this checkbox, like, hey, we could do this. So why don't we add that? And you end up with like lots of being done at different levels of skill. And then the real question is, well, given this total amount of resource that we have, is this the absolute most strategic, optimum thing for right now and for tomorrow? And if everyone's just doing the place and running these like check boxes, you really lose out because the scattershot approach is not how you
Yeah.
throw fuel on the fire.
You know, the other thing that you notice too is you notice people kind of stagnate. Like even the most
Hmm.
brilliant A player, self-starter people, unless someone was ready to step into that head of marketing role, which does happen, I think, or director of marketing or whatever the company wants to call it, which does happen, but that doesn't always happen. And not everybody's ready for that when a company needs it. And so you'll see really brilliant people start to stagnate and get stuck for what feels like no reason. And it's because there's no strategy connecting the dots. There's no clear operating process for the team. Everyone's like a super owner of what they do, but they're struggling to work as one.
Hmm.
And the behaviors start to get like all random. So you're like, "Oh, man, now we don't know how to launch a feature, but this was working well a couple years ago. What happened?" And no one can pinpoint it, and that's usually a really good sign of hey, let's bring in a leader
Hmm.
because you just need someone that can think at a higher level, pull out of the weeds, start identifying patterns, and also help the team grow.
Hmm.
That's also what a lot of companies miss when hiring a head of marketing. They want someone to just fix the marketing, but sometimes you need someone to lift that team up.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point. So I'm wondering, and I know this puts you on the spot, but from a high level, when you come into a business and you see that, okay, we are just doing kind of checkbox marketing and there's a big gap in terms of strategy and like where we're putting our focus. From a high level, what are the main like 5 steps that you would use to identify and triage and prioritize the direction?
Oh, man. I mean, it depends, right? You've gotta look at what does the CEO care about? In particular, if you're the head of marketing reporting to the CEO, which is the structure I'm in, but I know that varies, so
Mhm.
take caution. If you're reporting to the CEO, you have gotta figure out what they care about, and you've gotta figure out if what they care about is what they're saying, because sometimes those are not the same thing. So you've gotta watch for that. You've gotta know their number one thing. Is it actually revenue or is it, like, monthly active users that's leading to revenue? And then how do you back in your goals? You figure out the goals and you align on the goals. That's the number one thing because then what you can do is evaluate everything else against that. How are your cross functional relationships set up as you're going in? So I pay attention to how am I being introduced to people? How is my role rolled out to the team? How are people responding to me, just getting to know them? And where can we partner on moving towards those goals? And where is there gonna be a little bit of friction? You
Mm.
start writing all of that down because 'cause you're gonna have to figure that part out. Then you look at your team. Do you have the right seats for those goals? If so, that's a good step because then you ask, do you have the right people in the right seats? Can you get people to where they need to be? And sometimes the answer is yes, and sometimes the answer is no. And sometimes you're
Mhm.
like, oh my God, we have all the wrong roles, right? And then you need to build that plan because there's not much you can do until you fix that.
Mhm.
And then you look at, do we have the right behaviors and mindset on our team? Like, are we able to work towards this goal? Do we have the right systems and operating process? And I don't mean layer in 5,000 processes like a giant corporation if you don't need one. Everyone needs some sort of like, okay, this is what good looks like.
Mhm.
This is what's expected of you. This is the cadence. This is what we need to hit our goals. And here's how it fits into the bigger picture. And so you start evaluating all of these layers against those goals. And then you can back into, okay, here are the activities we're doing, here are the people we have, here are the stakeholder relationships we have. Here's what needs to change or stay the same. And that's your strategy. And you're going to have a couple strategies. You're going to have your actual marketing strategy. You're going to have your team like coaching development strategy. You're also going to have your stakeholder management strategy. And a lot of people forget about this part. You literally do need to have some sort of plan of how you're gonna manage up to your boss and how you're gonna manage across to your peers. And if you don't do that, you will struggle and you will run into
Yeah, you can't
that
do it
first
alone.
bump. You
Yeah.
can't do it alone, and people figure it out on the fly, but it's much easier if you have an approach going in. So you figure out that strategy, you figure out that coaching plan, then you go through your ops process, and Andrew Kaplan, who mentors marketers and does coaching, he actually has, like, a good head of growth operating system that I
Mhm.
think even marketing folks who aren't growth people, but in PLG you are, can kinda take and think through, okay, values, behaviors, mindset, system, what good looks like. And then you go into execution and cadence. And all of this depends. Are you campaign based or are you life cycle and event based in your marketing, right? Like
Mhm.
that is all dependent on the strategy, but you have to look through the lens of the goals and the context of the org and org maturity.
Yeah, that was a great answer for on the fly. I love
Thank you.
it. Yeah, that was good. Reminded me of all my corporate life for a moment. One question I have for you, especially now, like in the age of AI where everything is changing all the time and we're seeing a lot more volume, like every channel, it's just easier for anybody, regardless of skill or offering or anything, just to say more, with less effort. So I'm sure everyone, I mean, I hear it all the time from other guests that they feel like channels are saturated. It's more difficult to stand out. How does that affect PLG?
I mean, if it's harder to stand out, it's harder to stand out no matter who you are.
Yeah.
Like it I think the cold hard truth is this isn't a problem unique to PLG. This if the inbox is cluttered, whether you're a PLG company sending a nudge based on like some sort of customer event that they did
Hmm.
in the product, or whether you're a salesperson doing outbound, no matter what robot is sending that for you,
Yeah.
like it's just gonna be crowded and it's just gonna be hard to stand out. And I think the part that people struggle with the most right now is that for a little bit, it was actually easy. And
Yeah, for a
I don't
moment. Yes.
for a
Yeah,
moment, it
yeah.
was easy. And I don't think people are comfortable quite yet with saying that to themselves
Mhm.
because it wasn't easy for everyone, in particular if you're a PLG and you're struggling with product market fit or you've got all sorts of quirks, but now it's not so easy anymore. And it just is actually hard. And you can't just be good at a bunch of spreadsheets and data. And I think that's the part that is killing people right now internally. And I also think that's why we're seeing a lot of people go into, oh my God, I can automate everything with AI.
Yeah,
It can be faster,
yeah.
efficiency, data,
What did
look at the numbers, look at the spreadsheet.
what did you mean by you can't just be good at spreadsheets and data? What were you thinking there?
You've got to be creative.
Okay. Yeah.
You have to be creative. And I don't think anybody today likes to hear that because in the last, what, 5 to 10 years, we've seen this giant shift towards measurement and data and marketers, in particular marketing leaders, needing this like almost analyst level knowledge. Like,
Mhm.
do you know SQL? And can you deal with SQL? And can you do
Yeah.
amplitude and post log and mix panel
Yeah.
and Google Analytics and GA4 because they changed Google Analytics and hate us, right? All of these things. And so
Yeah.
everybody over indexed on those skills, which are important and great. And
Yeah.
now the robots can do all of that. And whatever they can't do today, give them 6 months.
Yeah, that's what it feels like. And I feel like, I mean, when you were describing that over indexing on just being an analyst, there are some CMOs that I talk to where it really does sound to me like they have this perspective of just investing. Like we invest in some things, we measure the returns, and then we reallocate resources, which of course is I mean, that is part of marketing, But I think to your point, it doesn't solve this creativity problem of you need always in the today's context, like how are you going to stand out now? Which is it seems to be the answer to that question is changing more quickly than it used to.
And you have to be able to adapt faster. And it's so funny because when I mentor and when I teach younger career marketers, I talk about managing a budget and experimentation as if it's your investment
Mhm.
portfolio. What's your risk tolerance? What's your time horizon, right? Like all of these things that we do in our personal investment portfolios actually does translate. It's a good way to think about it. But the other thing that I tell them is even if you identify as a performance marketer, if you do not know what good creative looks like without testing it, oh, you are going to waste time on an experiment. That is just the wrong, you've got to know. If you don't deeply understand your customer, no matter where you are
Yeah.
in marketing, maybe the exception of a giant corporation, but like that's not
Yeah.
my expertise. And even then, I think everybody would be better for it.
Yes. Yeah. This makes me think of this. I've seen this, especially in earlier stage companies where they're running tests to figure out the right fit, the right message channel fit, where it's like, it's almost like the founders, they don't want to make a tough decision about who's this for. And it's the idea is like, well, we could test everyone, message across every person, and then we'll just find one that works. And I don't think you could do that. It does.
Can.
It's too broad. It's not as effective as saying, we're going to focus in on what's the best message for a real LTP that we've chosen for strategic reasons.
I'll give you a good example. So you can test everything. So one of the big things that I've done at Balsamic is overhaul ICP positioning and the brand.
Hmm.
Like we did a whole reset. And so we redid our website. And there were a couple ways that this could have happened. The textbook way is you write a bunch of positioning statements down after some jobs to be done interviews, you pull from that, and then you run a bunch of tests,
Hmm.
which I still think is valid to do. But we needed a hard reset, and testing before the hard reset was going to dilute us having a really strong point of view on brand.
Hmm.
Same thing with design. We can go test a bunch of design choices, but at the end of the day, you have to test when you're on a foundation. and we were saying, "Hey, our foundation wasn't working." And so we redo positioning, we redo the website. We run it by some customers, but we're not doing formal tests.
Right.
That's just
Yeah.
me talking to people normally. Our website signups were up 40%. They're still up 40%. It's a crazy jump, and everybody was like, "Oh my god, are we gonna break the website? We're doing a bunch of redirects, SEO, all the things." And the mantra that I kept telling my team was, "You know in your gut that you need to do something big and material, and the worst thing that happens is you fall absolutely flat on your face
Mm.
and you pivot." But testing our way incrementally to a big reset like that,
Yeah. You can't.
we won't change.
It's the same in, I would say, like any, so my background's engineering, and it's the same in engineering. When you have a system and you want to see what really matters, you can't make micro changes and like find your way to this enormous return. You really try massively different ideas. And then you have to have some real, what's the word, conviction that those are worth making that bet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then at some point you can optimize and you can test and you can iterate, and I think you should, but you've gotta know when it's time, and I think right now, the biggest problem is that more companies are facing a need to do some level of reset
Hmm.
and reset their foundation, and the place where that becomes really frustrating is when you treat that like an incremental shift versus like, "Ooh, what we were doing really isn't working now."
Hmm. Yeah. Well, what would you say to others as we wrap up? What's your best advice to survive here in 2025?
Oh, man. I think my best advice is that actually knows how to survive this. And anybody that's telling you that they know how to survive this is probably trying to sell you a course. And and that's fine, but the best way to survive this is going to be to challenge yourself. And I think that's really hard. A lot of leaders like to talk about how we like to challenge ourselves and
Hmm.
level up and all this stuff, but like, let's be honest, we get kind of tired and we sometimes sit up in strategy land. And like, even at small companies, it happens. And this is a time where you really get to challenge yourself and stretch and grow. And you have to be a sponge, almost like you were at the very beginning of your career.
Hmm.
And if you can tap into that with the perspective that you've brought over the years of developing your career in different teams, then I think you have a chance at calling those strong shots that'll win.
Hmm.
But I don't think there's a recipe for success other than trying hard.
Yeah. Yeah, and if I could yes and to that, because it was such a great answer. The one thing it seems to me to be important is to do actual, with all the changes that are happening right now, you have to actually get your hands dirty to see, you know, how does it actually work versus, what am I reading about?
Yeah, I think you have to do both. You have to listen to a lot of different points of view. I think you have to get your hands dirty and click on a bunch of stuff. I
Hmm.
think you have to run an experiment or try a tool that makes you want to cry and one that gets you really excited. I think we're all going to have to learn skills that we're really excited about. And I think we're also going to have to learn skills that we're really dreading learning. And I think that's going to be the hardest part of this shift is it is big. It
Hmm.
is uncertain. Many of our businesses are facing some level of existential crisis, whether it's in marketing the product, both the leadership team, the talent, if you're a growing team, how do you bring in new talent? Like there's 4,000 angles to this. And the best way to get through it is to just do the thing. And I think that's really hard for some people to hear, especially at this point in your career where you feel like,
Yeah, I should
but
have
I'm the
figured
one
it out
that's
already.
brought in as
Yeah.
yeah, but, like, you shouldn't. You're
Hmm.
actually the person that should be modeling how to figure out the stuff that you don't know and how to admit what you don't know. I think
Hmm.
if you're in particular, if you're a leader at a SaaS during this time, you have to be the person that's the best at saying, "You know what? I don't know this laundry list of stuff, and here's how I'm gonna figure it out."
Excellent. Thank you so much, Ariel. It was a great conversation.
Thank you.